Satnam, this is Namjoti Kaur. I am here with Cristine Price, and Cristine is a mental health counselor, and among other amazing things, in northern Utah. And I'm going to interview her, talk to her a little bit, and we're going to have a conversation that should be very exciting and edifying and interesting. So first, Cristine, introduce yourself. Tell us about you.
So yeah, I have a background in mental health counseling, but I call it integrative mental health counseling because I blend the West and the East, the best that both have to offer. So I use traditional methods of therapy, mental health therapy, but I've brought in a lot of really good Eastern practices, including, meditation, mindfulness, yoga, and even working with the chakras, which I think we're going to talk about.
Yes, we are going to talk about that. So I like that you call it integrative mental health counseling.
Yeah, it's like integrative medicine. So yeah, integrative medicine works with, so in the background of that, it's, in the West, they studied cadavers to develop medicine. So what is a cadaver missing? Life force energy. And in the East, they study the life force energy, but not so much, work with the body directly as just a body. Right. So bringing the two together is awesome. And
yes, I am a big fan of using all of God's gifts. And that's why I think you've been so successful as a therapist in your area, because there's just not a lot of that available anywhere.
It is kind of unique, but when people find it there, it's like, that's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And, and it's nice that so I don't really call what I do energy work, because I feel like there's a science definitely to what I do. And I want to emphasize that. And so I'm actually also a student with Quantum University, working on my doctorate there in natural medicine. And I've loved how it's connected, even learning about the chakras, there's a connection to, a true science in how that all works together in a quantum way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You're so adorable. People who listen to this podcast can't see her, but we are making a video of this chat, so it'll end up somewhere, probably YouTube or Facebook or something. So tell us what you have going on. I think you want to talk about chakras, but whatever order we get to it all is fine.
Yeah.
Actually, I should mention Cristine is also the author of several books. We don't need to talk about them unless you want to.
Well, yes, those are coming out, and they're part of, a lot of what I'm doing. And so right now I'm working on a phase of books that are tied to meditation, and using meditation as an intervention to, working with the 0 point field to be able to neutralize ego issues and anxiety and all kinds of things that just kind of become, I guess, mute points when you're in the space of zero.
Yes.
So
zero, we call that shunya.
Shunya, yes, exactly.
Okay, so tell us what you have coming up, and if you want, you can tell us the titles of your books and where to find them.
Well, right now I'm focusing on, I've just created a new classroom, about classroom, and it's quantaliving.com. And so on that site, I do kind of reference my books, but I've created some programs around them. So for example, 10 Ways to Balance Your Brain Chemistry is looking at how to change brain chemistry with, I call it the triangle or diamond of wellness. So there's ways to intervene with your physical well-being without meds, with your mental well-being, your emotional well-being, and your spiritual well-being. And so looking at the spiritual well-being is, basically looking at the vital body as well. And so within the vital body are the chakras and the meridians and the aura. So one course I've created is around balancing your chakras using a variety of different modalities or approaches, including sensory approaches. And yeah, that's what I'd like to talk more about.
Yeah. So tell us,
Yeah.
it's like a seven.
There's 7. I'm working with the 7 basic chakras. And so the course, I've created it so people could actually come in from either angle. In fact, I've kind of thought about making the heart chakra the center of the course, and even the starting point, because from the heart center, the other chakras are connected to the heart. And so from the heart, you have the upper triangle, which is where typically people are a little top heavy that I run into. And so that means that
not
everybody.
People who are more like, who are looking for integrative health stuff.
People who are more conscious.
The path of awakening. Okay.
On the path of awakening.
You tend to be a little focused on the upper chakras.
Well, yeah, we tend to be more comfortable, I think, in our upper chakras.
Yeah.
So that's processing ideas, using our intuition with our third eye, connecting to our source. Yeah.
Yeah, I love all that.
We love all that, right? Yeah. And you think that would be enough, but
I think that's the most important part. That's
what
we think. Yeah.
That's what we think. And then we have the lower triangle. And what's interesting is that I see a lot of relationships. In fact, one of the researches I'm doing is with this contrast in a lot of relationships, where we have people who are very comfortable in that spiritual triangle, but they're not fully balanced. And so they tend to attract people that are a little stronger in their lower triangles.
Okay.
And so someone who shows up who's really strong in a lower triangle is going to be really in the physical realm. They might be kind of more focused on money. They have a little more focus on their center of self. And so they may look self-centered. And they're also, a lot of times they'll play rather than get serious. And so that might look like, escape or addictive behaviors even. So that's an imbalance with the lower.
Okay.
And so typically people who are more spiritual, so to speak, are not thinking of the lower triangle as a goal to develop, right? So
it's actually one of the most important, because you really can't open your heart without a strong lower triangle.
Right. Yeah. So I've learned a lot about the kind of that energetic anatomy of someone who's an empath, who's really in their heart space and wants to give.
Just a second.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, will you just tell what an empath is?
Okay. Yeah. So someone who's an empath tends to be really sensitive to emotions, to, kind of subtle things going on in their environment that other people may not pick up on if they're more protected, so to speak. And so an empath tends to be sensitive in like large groups of people, or walk into Walmart and just have anxiety, or be sitting with someone who they're feeling hurt by, and that other person has no idea that they're saying or doing things that are hurtful. And, in their conversation or in the way that they interact.
They tend to take on energy,
on things, and
feel drained in crowds.
It can be drained.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I think, well, I'm an empath. It took me years to figure that out and learn how to protect myself. And it's a tricky thing, being a happy empath. But it can definitely be done. But not knowing about it and not taking proper care of yourself as an empath can be quite painful. So tell us more about what you learned about the subtle.
So what I've learned about, like the lower chakras, so that includes the root chakra, the sacral, and the solar plexus. If those are stronger and more in balance with the upper chakras, then you've got a solid foundation and you are more complete and whole. You're going to attract different things. You're going to have a different life experience that's based on more of balance, and live in the physical realm with more comfort and, joy and all those good things. So So yeah, and I think the idea is to be able to see what does it look like to have positive experience with the root chakra, for example. And I see a lot of clients that, that are weaker in their root chakra because they don't want to get angry, for example, or they're disempowered because they associate that power with negative things, like, using it, to take advantage of other people or something that doesn't feel good to them. But there's ways to access that root chakra and be in, to connect to that power in that physical realm that can be very positive. So, yeah.
So let's say someone is listening right now and they're like identifying. Okay, yeah. What will your how do you address that in your course? What are you?
So in the course, so a couple things. One is it's kind of fun to be able to read the chakras. And so I have 3 different ways I go about that I've decided I'm actually going to want to teach that to people as just an introduction and a way to start connecting with this idea. Basically learning how to read those chakras yourself and to know where your balances and imbalances and what that looks like. So you can follow me on my Facebook page.
And we're back.
All right.
Okay. That was a crazy technical difficulty, and I don't even really remember what we were talking about.
Well, we're talking about reading chakras. So it's kind of the place to start, is to kind of know more about your own energy.
Right.
So it comes
wrong.
Or where you might have an excess, or you might, sometimes a chakra is still. It's not, moving and flowing. In fact, in the solar plexus, I see a lot of women that their chakras are still. And so they're just kind of like waiting to take care of themselves. They take care of everybody else first. And then when there's time left, they'll get to themselves.
Yes.
That would be.
And then they turn like 65 and they haven't done it.
And they're like, oh, I'm still working on it. Yeah, I might have time. Yeah.
And there's a lot of pent-up anger about that.
Yeah, there can be. But there's 3 different ways I've found to actually read your own chakras. So I'm going to do a little mini series on that.
Okay.
And so if people want access to that, it'll be free. It'll help you just get going in the process of understanding your own energy. And so you can text the word chakra and your email address to 435-915-6915. And then you'll get that little mini series. And so there's handouts with it, and just, it's simple.
That's great. I'm
Yeah.
going to text you right now.
All right, you do that. You can get it.
Okay, so then in the bigger course, though, I believe you said you incorporated a whole bunch of different.
Yes, which is why I thought of you to tell about this, because so I've done courses before that taught a lot of the principles about the chakras, different ways to kind of get in touch with that or to balance the energy. And there's a lot of sensory things you can do, which is fun. Music can help, and essential oils can help. And so that's fun. But I think the most powerful thing I found, one of the most powerful things I found is Kundalini yoga. To basically do a full Kundalini yoga session. I hear people say they feel good for a week from that. And it's, if you were to measure the energy before and after, I actually did. I started a little bit into that in my first series when a year or 2 ago. And I had everybody in the room do the Sat Kriya. So I had them read their chakra energies, especially the solar plexus and lower, before we did Sat Kriya, and then after Sat Kriya. And everyone in the room had a shift in their energy from that.
It's really powerful.
Yeah, it really is. So I learned that from my training with Yo, from the Jedi training. And, I learned a ton about, using Kundalini as a way to intervene with our well-being and to create better well-being. And So good stuff.
Okay.
So I incorporated a full Kundalini class now with each chakra.
Oh, good.
And in fact, my curriculum as a, to graduate from the Jedi training, level 0 training, was to do a Kundalini curriculum. And mine was on the chakras, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think I used in my comments that I wanted to take that course.
Yeah. So I had that kind of established. So this time around, I've got the full Kundalini segment in there. And then a year ago, I did your guided imagery training. And so I also have added a guided imagery for each chakra. And so what's really lovely is we do the full Kundalini process. And then when we go into our kind of savasana or meditation, then I use the guided imagery. Now that the body has kind of opened up and things are in balance, and then the subconscious can say, all right, what's next? And we use that opportunity to give some amazing messages and, kind of new ways of being in the world to that subconscious mind. So,
and the subconscious mind loves that.
It's fun.
And the body loves that, and everything loves the image.
Both of those trainings were so instrumental in completing what feels like that element of balancing.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's wonderful too, that you use these things in your practice as well, right? Sometimes with clients.
I do, yeah.
And they love it and keep coming back for more.
They do. I had one client who had come to, so I did this course in 2 parts, the instructional part and then the practice part. And her energy kept getting blocked on doing the practice. So when she came into her individual session, I actually pulled her into my meditation room and we did a Kundalini session. And she got up from that and she's like, all right, I am ready. I will do this. I don't usually do that, but if that's what, when people are in those upper chakras, they want to be in their head. They'll process all the information. In fact, they'll probably sit and watch the Kundalini video, but will they do it?
Yeah, I've seen people like that. During my imagery training, one girl watched the entire thing.
But didn't do it.
No, she did, but before she did any practice session, she had to get her mind
wrapped around it.
That it doesn't really work. It's experiential. but then yes, she did eventually get the experiential. But that's how some of us operate in the beginning, and then we tiptoe into the experiential, and then we're like, what did take me so long? So yeah, it was really fun having you in all those courses and seeing you now, you've always been a teacher in the community, but seeing you offer more stuff. So if people want to do this, they find this through, what's your website again?
So quantaliving.com. So quanta is the plural of quantum.
That's cool.
Good to know, right?
Like occupy.
So it's
Quanta, Quanta.
Living.
Okay. And I highly recommend anything, that Cristine puts out at some point in the future. I don't think I'll ever not recommend anything that you put out. So.
Well, and I recommend you to everyone. And so that's where I have some questions now, because so when I did the guided imagery training, I knew that I had just basically found, a gold mine of, way to access. In fact, I think my big story, my big comparison is I thought EMDR was great. And, and so eye movement desensitization.
Can you explain what EMDR is?
Yes. Okay. So eye movement desensitization reprocessing is accessing that limbic brain, which is really difficult to do verbally. And, you can't really use your intellectual mind to work with the limbic brain. It's kind of like trying to talk to a 2-year-old and get the 2-year-old to understand you.
And EMDR is great for helping people with trauma.
With trauma, right? That's been stored in that limbic brain. And so, because that isn't your rational mind, you don't try to be rational with it. You just allow the energy, it's kind of like energy, to move through it and reprocess so that your fight flight center can calm down and you can feel safe, and you know, and it's happening in your body, happening deeper than your mind.
And this is a therapeutic technique that right now
only therapists are able to use it,
which is actually great. It is like a subconscious accessing technique. And I'm glad that more and more therapists have it now.
Yes, for sure.
But what were you going to say?
So I use that quite often, and I think it's great for being able to pull up the material from the limbic brain to be able to reprocess it. But I would have a lot of clients leaving with all that material up and processing, and tears running down their face, and they were just really kind of like opened up and vulnerable, I think, when they left the room. I'm like, I don't know if I like that, you know, and kind of had to go sit in their car, I think, and process the rest of it before they could do their day. So when I found guided imagery, I discovered it went down into that subconscious mind and perhaps limbic brain, and worked with it down there. And then when we were done, then the person came back up, and it was like they'd been on vacation, not like they'd been to the dentist. So that, I loved that. And then they'd walk out of the room, my office, you know, like just looking refreshed, looking like, you know, they had just, you know, had a nap, not been drugged through the emotional roller coaster of trauma.
And they're like the same, or even more amazing benefits, you know? Like
for sure.
You know, what happens down there is hard to explain, right?
It is, right. And it happens in symbolism and metaphor and, you know, and things that, you know, resonate with that sensory mind. So
and learning how to facilitate it is a skill. But most people who are interested in healing can learn it, which is why I started training people in it, not just therapists, and not just therapists. Although I am focusing more on therapists now, just because I was training anybody who wanted to. And if you beg me, I still might let you if you're not a therapist, but I really want people that are actually going to take the technique and use it in a practice to reach people, because, you know, I want to reach as many people as I can. Also, I feel like there's a level of professionalism that comes when you know you're going to, in the course, when you know you're going to be taking it out and working with the public.
Yeah. So I use that now more often than EMDR with my clients. And I've had better results. But I feel like somehow I think some of those results are because it's almost like there's something infused within it that almost guarantees a positive outcome. And I think when you started to explain shamanism, there was kind of like something kind of clicked with that. So I'm curious, like, for you to explain that and how that's changed. You've changed the kind of the structure of the class a little.
Yes. So I'm still offering like a guided imagery training, but I've changed the name of it, and I've added a few things. I now call it's SHIFT for short, but it stands for Shamanic Hypnotic Imagery Facilitation Technique.
Isn't that cool? I love it.
So it's a mouthful, but I like that SHIFT is the acronym.
Awesome.
It kind of contains everything that it is, right? It's imagery. It's a facilitation technique. It's not a technique. It's a facilitation technique, right? So like I'm helping other people facilitate imagery journeys, and they're hypnotic journeys. So my background is in hypnotherapy, but also I have some background in Hawaiian shamanism. But ultimately, so let me just clarify.
How is Hawaiian shamanism different than like Native American?
Okay, first let me talk about what shamanism is.
Yes, perfect.
So shaman just means one who sees in the dark and who helps others see in the dark. So a shaman was like anciently like a guide, like a spiritual guide. And in shamanism, they used images for healing, imagery for healing. And it started as simply as just like dressing up you know, sometimes, and putting almost, they were the first actors. And they would dress up like the wind and like the birds, right? And they would do like a rain, you know what I mean? It was like they would shape shift, but really it was like to try to shift the environment. But mostly shamanic journeys are where you take someone into a receptive state. Like basically we call it a hypnotic state, but it's just a receptive state where they can experience images and imagery. But where was I going with this? Oh, the difference between Native American shamanism and Hawaiian shamanism, as I know it, is that the Native American way of shamanism is the way of the warrior. Okay, so there's light and dark, and there's a war going on. And the Hawaiian shamanism is the way of the adventurer. So it's more of like an adventure than a war, which for me, I think as an empath, I'm very sensitive about war metaphors. They really are difficult for me, you know, and I prefer the idea that, and I think this is partly my worldview too, as I go on in my path of consciousness, is that like a lot of this is an illusion anyway, so we might as well have fun with it, right? Even if we do encounter darkness, there's kind of an adventurous way to like navigate it, right? Like we can tickle it, we can laugh at it, we can put light on it, we can send it away with a blessing, kind of, right? It's just a subtle difference, but for me, it worked, okay? But I don't bring Hawaiian shamanism into this. The idea is that like a shamanic journey is an imagery journey. But there's one thing I want to say. Recently, shamanism has become associated with psychedelic drugs. It's none of that. In fact, the reason that people take psychedelic drugs, and they're starting, the new age word now is plant medicine. Have you heard that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Everyone's talking about plant medicine, which is really an unfortunate name because all medicine originally came from plants.
Yeah.
But you know, like whatever. This is a psychedelic drug, and people are taking it to have kind of like a visionary experience. Unfortunately, it damages the brain, and you vomit all over yourself, and all other kinds of negative side effects. And I just want to put my plug out there that that's not a good idea, because it is still a drug, and the drug is limited in its consciousness. And some people will tell me that, oh, I read a study that it really is great for people who are uptight and need to loosen up, or whatever the studies say. And I haven't seen those studies, and I would bet that they're not like peer reviewed and double blind. You know, like all I have, like really, like I have a lot of anecdotal studies from a lot of people I know who used to do that kind of stuff before they got into Kundalini yoga. And it's not good. It might be good once or twice, but then you have a bad trip and you're traumatized. Like you have PTSD from it, you know? And people who do Kundalini yoga and are on the path of consciousness need to know that there's a lot to lose if they use drugs. Because once you start to clear out your chakras and your nadis, and then you put that kind of outside influence on it, it can blow out your nadis and blow out your chakras and cause a lot more damage than it would to someone who's already a drug addict, you know? But if you're on the path of consciousness, stay away from that stuff. Even if they call it a ceremony, even if they call themselves a shaman, stay away from it, okay? If you want to have an amazing psychedelic experience, do imagery.
Yes, for sure.
It's psychedelic, and there's no side effects. Like you said, you leave like you are on vacation. You feel like you, even when it's intense stuff you're dealing with, right? Like
right.
Whatever. There's this amazing way, you know, with the facilitator who's trained, to guide you through that and come out of it totally empowered. Right?
Absolutely.
So I don't know if I've hit on any of the points that you were asking me.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's part of it, is that it's a spiritual process. It feels like to me, kind of like, and there are some imagery journeys where, you know, the spiritual realm is kind of what you're accessing, the metaphysical journeys.
Yeah,
And
I mean, it's like the
yeah.
gateway to the supernatural. So
Yeah.
some uh, some tribes and stuff would do vision quests, where you go out into the woods, the wilderness, with nothing but your drum,
Mhm.
food, no water, and they would fast for many days, and that fasting would bring on kind of like a state, right? Like not a delusionary state, but like you break down the barriers
Mhm.
between this world and the other world. But and then people they would get a vision quest, and they would have they would have an experience with spirit, and they would have a vision. But you don't have to go fast for 3 days. You can just do shamanic imagery.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's changed about the program since you've done it is I've just included a little bit more, like I talk more openly about it being a shamanic technique, because I really want to kind of reclaim shamanism. It's from like all the drug pushers
Mhm.
for what it is, and someone asked me recently, isn't shamanism a spiritual gift you're born with, or can it be taught? And I was like, yeah, there is to some extent, there are people born with spiritual gifts, but there are certain things about it that anyone can be taught. And so that's what I'm
Yeah.
And then I've added a component that I call community service. And it's where, well, I don't call community, but it is a form of community service where you use your sort of shamanic imagery facilitation powers to help the global community in
Awesome.
times of, what's that called? Natural disaster or global trauma. You can kind of connect with the energy at
So
large.
kind of like a meditation
It's shape.
approach.
It's actually shape.
Okay.
So you
You don't
go.
have to like go to the foreign country and
No, you
physically.
just stay
Yeah.
in your body. You stay 1% shaman, 1% you, and then you connect with. Let's say it's a wildfire. Okay, you connect with the wildfire. You become the wildfire.
Oh, I heard about this because you went through a wildfire
I did.
a while back. Yes.
And this is what's interesting. So you become the wildfire, and then you just kind of experience what is that like, and then you check for what would be appropriate, right? Like, can I change directions?
Mm.
Can I, die out? Like,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes you connect with the wildfire, or the rain, or the sick dying tree, or whatever. And you may have an agenda going in, but then as the tree, or as the wildfire, that's not appropriate. So then you find out what would be appropriate for the best for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
For the best feeling. There's a great story about that in Sergey King's book, about how a bunch of shaman got together and were asked to kind of do this on a hurricane that was heading towards Texas. And they all kind of shapeshifted into the hurricane, and they got it to move back. Okay.
Wow.
And then the hurricane moved forward again towards Texas. And then they got it to move back again, and then move forward. And it was like this dance for a couple of days. And then finally they realized we didn't really check for appropriateness. So they found out so natural disasters are attracted to human energy. And there was a lot of energy in Texas. It was like a lot of hatred energy. And then they were like, okay, well, we know you have to go do whatever you're going to do, hurricane. But they basically said, okay, whatever you need to do, let's make it so that the least amount of life is lost. And so it's the highest and best good for everyone. And then what happened is the hurricane changed directions, and it hit Louisiana.
Oh, wow.
And it actually, so there, Louisiana, that whole area had been praying for a long time just for change,
Yeah.
Nobody cared about, was it Louisiana and Mississippi? Yeah, nobody cared about them. No one was paying any attention to them. All their
I remember Louisiana, yeah.
Yeah, that hurricane, was it Harvey or Hurricane? Whatever.
Yeah, I remember.
What it did was it brought a lot of attention and a lot of money and a lot of funding, and not that much life was lost in that hurricane. And then he has another great story about a tidal wave that didn't happen. Like the tidal wave came up, and then it went to the eastern, it just like separated.
Wow.
And we can't take credit for that as shaman, but we can, it's like prayer. It's a form of prayer. Lots of people around the world are praying too. But it's something that you can do. And I've seen amazing results from it. I've seen the clouds clear. I've helped a sick tree to heal. So things like that. And then also just, it's like a way of being, a way of living, a way of seeing the world, and influencing the energy all around you. And it's not so much as like exerting your force on the world, but just inviting like a better image.
Yeah.
For the world. Like just kind of, okay, like what if I just put this image into the unconscious, into this unconscious of, and then if anybody out there wants to pick this up, they'll have a better day, you know?
Nice.
Or I'm gonna send this image to that waitress over there.
Wow.
And if it's strong enough and powerful enough, maybe it's just an image of like flowers growing, right? Her subconscious will pick it up. So, I mean, I go into more detail about the science of it all, and how it works, like, because hypnotically speaking, there is a science behind hypnosis and how it works. But then the shamanic aspect is more of just like the spiritual science and the responsibilities that come with that.
Yeah. There's a lot to the power of intention. And sometimes you can feel that, you know, like this wave of intention that moves. So, yeah.
Oh, so I should mention that my next shift training is starting in January 28th.
And this is the one that's still at that discount price, right? That reduced price of
and it's actually
the old price.
It's a huge discount. It's like 80% off. Because
of what the new price will be.
Yes. I am changing the price so that I can market it to a different audience and create more, create more shifting for people. So, but you can still get 80% off if you join this time. And how would they find that? Let me think. treeoflifestore.org. Or you can go to treeoflifekundaliniyoga.net, or you can just email me, find me through one of those websites to register. Okay. And it is a 6-month course. It's really 8 weeks of intensive learning, and then you start practicing and you get support through your practice through what would you call that? Yeah,
it's like a practicum.
Yeah.
And that was really valuable. I mean, that was huge for, because it shouldn't be intimidating, but it is different. And I think I had that fear of like, all right, once someone's, kind of in that imagery state, I felt that it was, I would be in a very, a position that I would need to be very careful with and honor and, and protect that client. And so it was really nice to be able to practice with other people who were doing the same thing, learning the same thing, and then get enough of that practice and then be able to do the next level of that, like an internship, I guess, with actual clients and be accountable with that piece. So I liked how it was, definitely like how that flowed, and it felt very similar to what I did in, my graduate training.
Right.
As far as, preparing you in phases.
Right. Except your graduate training was probably much different.
It was, well, and I guess it was similar maybe to the EMDR training. And that was about, it was kind of a full year with that kind of, So we practiced on each other. We did, then we had to, basically be supervised for a little while, and it was similar to that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. I think that we have given people lots to think about. Is there anything else that we wanted to talk about in this little conversation that we're having?
I think that's good. You did remind me though about frequencies. So I love being able to also measure frequencies. And so I think it's wise for people to do that with something like, for example, sometimes something will come out and it's kind of like gray, you know? So like, is that really, what frequency is that at? And be able to measure that. And so I also have a course on that in my
What's the name of
quantaliving.com.
that course?
And it's, so it looks at 7 frequency levels with
Okay.
lower frequencies, but also the purpose of lower frequencies and
Mm-hmm.
what to do, as you know, sometimes there's a catalyst that'll allow someone to move from a lower frequency to a higher frequency.
Interesting.
And then to also look at each of those frequencies in different areas of our life.
Mm-hmm.
For example, with money,
Mm-hmm.
there's different frequencies. And a lot of times those upper chakra people aren't tapped into
Mm-hmm.
a real strong money frequency.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, we fluctuate with those.
Yes.
And yeah, and so I've kind of called that course a ladder of love
Mm-hmm.
and levels of light. And I'm kind of using both terms to explain it, you know, kind of.
We could talk about this all day.
We could.
Especially the like, I could talk about the whole like money thing all day, because
I know.
I have a whole other thing, a whole other like
Your prosperity training.
I have a transformational course for spiritual people, but what
we should have a follow-up.
Yeah, we should.
There we go.
But I was interested, you said there's catalysts that help people move up. What have you identified as catalysts? Because I've been thinking about this.
Well, so for example, when people are shifting from a 300 level to a 400 level, so what that looks like is someone who's kind of been comfortable in a box, maybe in a comfort zone. They're a good person. They do a lot of good things in their life, but they haven't quite awakened into their heart space, into living from their heart. And so that's one shift that'll happen. And so usually the catalyst with that is pain. And so and maybe sometimes I do use, you know, some of those techniques to open up the heart. And that's why people are walking out of my office bawling, because that's not necessarily a comfortable process.
Right.
But once you get into the heart space and find, you know, that frequency and kind of calibrate to that, you know, then.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is why I love imagery, is because it doesn't require as much pain.
Yeah.
It's like you can go through this transformational thing and like
it softens it.
Yeah, it's just
it softens it,
because it's like I don't even know. It's not like easy. Like sometimes you're going there and you're like, okay, let's look at all the trauma, but then you bring in the healing element. Maybe it's like you said, because it happens like in the space before you come up, rather than bringing.
Yeah. And it could be that I've now attracted clients who are more in the 400 moving up to 500. And at the 500 is where there's more peace. There's that integration with the mind, and imagery is perfect for that, because it takes you from that emotional drama into this higher consciousness of like, oh, now I see it clearly. Now I have that perspective. And so I think imagery is great with that, because you can see things from different angles and from a higher place.
What about the moon?
About the what?
The moon.
Oh, the moon. We should do a whole thing on the moon, right?
No, I mean the moon as a catalyst.
A catalyst. Oh.
So I was just talking to someone, and they're like, it's fascinating. Okay, so the sun is like, I'm going to make this really brief so we can end this, but the sun is like, it's like 800 times bigger than the moon.
Okay.
And the moon is like, it's like 800 times farther away from the moon. Anyways, there's all this weird science that
math around it.
The moon is the exact right size that like when they cross over and they have like an eclipse, like that they have this perfect like I mean, it's you know, obviously a genius designed this. And like, there's a million other planets where this doesn't happen. But what they've found scientifically is every time there's like an eclipse, science makes a jump. Like there's this huge jump in like humanity's ability to cognate, and like brilliant scientific like advancements are made every time there's like a big eclipse.
Wow, I did not know this.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay,
awesome.
There's probably lots of different things that can cause, you know, a jump. Just like, I mean, going to white tantric yoga will cause like a huge jump.
A shift.
And I guess it is a little bit of pain sometimes. Like when you meditate and you sit there for a long time, you can go through discomfort or emotional. But, you know, it's very short-lived, and on the other side is the bliss and the elevation that we're seeking. So interesting. All right. Well, that was fun. Let's do
That was fun.
we'll plan it and you guys can listen for it. But until then, signing off. I'll put all the information for the stuff we talked about in the show notes so that you can easily find those links or phone numbers. Okay.
Satnam.